He punctured the nerve, the nurse whispered, then told us to lie. Gasps echoed. Then came the secret email. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. Emily Carter had always believed in systems. Architecture, medicine, justice. Systems were meant to hold. At 28, her life was a carefully built structure of long nights in design firms, cross-country site visits, and quiet dreams of starting a family once she landed her next contract. When the pain hit, sharp, unrelenting, like a blade dragged deep into her side, she didn't panic. She called the clinic, followed protocol, handed over trust like blueprints to a builder. The hospital was sleek, quiet, cold in the way expensive places are. A nurse at the front desk smiled with sanitized calm. The forms were clipped neatly to a board. Within hours, Emily was prepped, sedated, and handed into the hands of Dr. Matthew Keller. His voice was measured, practiced. His handshake was warm but detached, the kind that signaled competence without connection. She remembered thinking, "He's done this 1,000 times." And maybe that was the problem. She woke groggy, her mouth dry, her legs heavier than they had ever felt. It wasn't pain. It was absence, a void where sensation used to live. She lifted her head and whispered hoarsely, "I can't move my legs." A nurse leaned over and smiled with too much reassurance. "That's normal," she said, "just the anesthesia wearing off." Another nurse echoed her. They charted her vitals, fluffed her pillow, and walked out. Emily lay staring at the ceiling, trying to convince herself they were right, that her body just needed time, that her toes would twitch, eventually. They never did. By day 2, the numbness had become a quiet scream in her mind. Still, she was discharged with a smile and a folder of post-op instructions. Her mother helped her down the hospital steps. At home, Emily tried to reach the bathroom, 3 steps before her knees buckled. She hit the floor hard, and everything inside her screamed that something was terribly, irreversibly wrong. The new hospital ran the tests. "Spinal nerve damage," the neurologist said. "Likely occurred during the operation." Her voice was clinical, but her eyes said more. This wasn't routine. Emily demanded her records. What she received was a butchered file, sterile, stripped, and half missing. No note of her paralysis. No mention of post-op complaints. Just cheerful vitals and a box checked. Patient discharged in stable condition. It wasn't just negligence, it was erasure. And Emily Carter understood something no one had said aloud. They had closed the file on her before her life had even begun to fall apart. The air inside Department 12 of the Los Angeles County Courthouse felt like poured cement. Thick, silent, permanent. Emily Carter wheeled herself to the plaintiff's table, her posture upright, jaw clenched, every movement controlled not by ease but by will. Across the aisle, 12 figures in tailored suits loomed behind polished binders and glowing tablets. They represented the institution, Keller, the hospital, and the layers of money, prestige, and legal insulation wrapped around them like armor. Dr. Keller himself sat at the far end of the table, his face composed with mechanical neutrality. Their eyes met once. His flicked away like she was a flickering light bulb, unpleasant but ignorable. The courtroom murmured with routine until the opening statements began. The defense moved like a practiced symphony. Their lead counsel, a man named Whitmore, spoke in melodic legalese. "While we acknowledge Ms. Carter's post-operative condition is deeply unfortunate, it falls within the known statistical margin of risk. Our client followed standard surgical protocol. The records reflect full disclosure." He gestured toward the judge with a courtroom smile, every word balanced, drained of weight. Emily's attorney, Reggie Blake, didn't have the same polish, but he had something sharper. He rose slowly, unfolded a single sheet of paper, and looked directly at the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "there's something strange about this case. Not just the injury, not just the silence, but the vanishing." He tapped the file in front of him. "Where are the notes, the post-operative charts, the report from the nurse Emily spoke to twice, the incident log for the equipment failure? They aren't in the file. They were there, and now they aren't." The defense objected, but it came too fast, too loud. It broke the courtroom's rhythm. The judge narrowed his eyes. Then came the pivot, unplanned, unscripted. The hospital's chief medical officer asked to speak. A tall man with silver-rimmed glasses and a suit too crisp for humility, he stood and said plainly, "We experienced a server outage last fall. Several documents may have been lost due to a technical error." The words should have sounded clean, clinical. Instead, they landed like wet footprints, vague, uncomfortable, and not quite believable. The judge stared at him for a long second. "I want full access to the server logs, backups, internal communications, everything, by end of day tomorrow." Across the courtroom, a woman on the defense team dropped her pen. No one moved to pick it up. For the first time, something cracked, and everyone knew it. The courtroom, until then simmering with polite procedure, cracked open like a fault line. From the moment Sophia Morales entered, something shifted. She was smaller than expected, almost swallowed by the formal navy blazer she wore, her dark hair pulled back so tightly it seemed it might snap. Her eyes darted around the room, not with defiance, but with the shaky resolve of someone who had carried too much truth for too long. She was called by the defense as a character witness, expected to affirm Dr. Keller's professionalism. Her name had appeared on the OR staffing log from the day of Emily's surgery. What the defense didn't expect was what she would do when she sat down. Her voice, when it finally came, was brittle but clear. "I was in the OR," she began. "Dr. Keller punctured the nerve. I saw it happen." The words struck like a dropped gavel. No one moved. She continued, breathing hard, tears threatening behind her lashes. "He knew. He started yelling. There was blood. He told us, 'Say nothing. This never happened. Understand?'" Gasps swept through the gallery like wind through dry grass. The lead defense attorney jumped to his feet. Objection, impropriety, hearsay, prejudice. But Reggie Blake was already walking toward the bench, holding a sheet of paper in his hand. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. He placed the document on the evidence table. The judge raised an eyebrow, adjusted his glasses, and read the header aloud. "Confidential internal email, do not forward." Then came the sentence that would not be forgotten. "Any scandal puts our reputation at risk. Delete the records. We'll handle it." The courtroom detonated, not with volume, though voices did rise, but with irreversible consequence. The jury sat stunned. Reporters scribbled like machines. A court officer stepped forward as if to control the noise, then stopped, sensing that order could not return to a room where something sacred had just been violated. The judge pounded his gavel once, twice, 3 times. "Silence. This court will verify the authenticity of that document immediately. I want forensic confirmation and server logs submitted for review." On the defense bench, a woman closed her laptop slowly, her hands trembling. Dr. Keller stared straight ahead, face pale, lips pressed so tightly they'd gone white. And Emily? For the first time since the trial began, she leaned back in her wheelchair, not from exhaustion, but from knowing. The truth, once buried, was clawing its way to the surface, and it had just torn the courtroom open. The final day of the trial did not begin with ceremony. It began with breath. The kind held tightly in the chests of everyone in the room, waiting. After weeks of testimony, documents, denials, and revelations that rippled beyond the courtroom's walls, The moment had arrived when the one person most affected by all of it was finally allowed to speak. Emily Carter was wheeled to the center of the floor, her chair aligned with the witness stand but facing the jury. The courtroom hushed. The judge gave her a small nod. No oaths were needed. Her very presence was truth. She looked at the jurors, then at the judge, then let her eyes rest, firmly, fearlessly, on Dr. Keller. He didn't look back. Her voice was calm, but it carried with surgical precision. "I didn't come here for money," she said, her tone cutting through the silence like a blade. "I came here because no one should ever wake up and realize their legs no longer move, and then be told it's in their head. No one should be discharged and fall to the floor at home, unable to stand, and be told it was their anxiety." She paused. A courtroom reporter stopped typing for a moment just to look at her. "They made a mistake, a human one. But what they did afterward wasn't human. It was calculated, cold. They deleted my pain. They tried to write me out of their system like I was a typo. But I'm still here. And so is the truth." She didn't cry. She didn't need to. Every person in that room felt the weight she carried, and the fire she had refused to let go out. The judge cleared his throat, straightened the papers before him as though doing so would anchor the gravity of what had just been said. Then he ruled. The hospital and Dr. Keller were guilty of medical negligence and deliberate suppression of evidence. Emily Carter was awarded $8.7 million in damages. Dr. Keller's license was permanently revoked, and the hospital's board was referred for criminal investigation. The courtroom didn't erupt. It exhaled. And while the sum awarded could never give Emily her legs back, it did something else. It restored her voice. A year later, that voice founded a legal advocacy group for patients ignored and erased by institutions like the one that tried to silence her. Emily never walked unaided again. But what she built afterward stood taller than anyone who had ever tried to bury her.